And I don't think it's really even a good idea to try to set up podcast guests as sales prospects because it's kind of disingenuous. And I do think they can sniff it out.
What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to hear amazing stories from other agency owners on what's working for them and what has not worked, so you can avoid it and get through really kind of where you're going a lot quicker and kind of get that cheat sheet code, even though there's no such thing as a silver bullet. But on today's episode, we're going to talk with an agency owner that's been around for 14 years, going through tons of ups and downs. And we're going to talk about how to identify those ups and downs and what you can do in order to really get through those quicker. So let's go ahead and jump into the show. Hey, Paris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason. Great to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
My name is Paris Childress. I'm founder and CEO of Hop Online. We're a performance marketing agency primarily for SaaS companies all over the world. We are based in Bulgaria, have a team of about 35 people, and we're in our 14th year, as you mentioned, so we're still going strong, and it's been quite a journey. I also want to add that I'm a big fan and I've been listening to your show for many years, and you and your guests have strongly influenced a lot of good decisions that I've made, I believe, over the years.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, I always often make bad decisions, so it makes it easier for other people to avoid those bad decisions and make good decisions. So, well, thank you for that, and thanks for listening. Let's kind of talk about, how did you start your agency? Are you an accidental agency owner, or did you have visions of Gander and I wanted to create this and punish myself?
Oh, absolutely accidental. I think that I went out and started the agency when the first client, who wasn't really even a real client, asked me for an invoice. I think that story, also I've heard that story before.
Real question is, did you know what an invoice was? Because I didn't know what an invoice was.
I had an idea of what it was. I didn't think it was going to be necessary to get paid. But then when he said, well, we need an invoice in order to pay you. So then I rushed out and started the company. I came up with a name. And even then I didn't really know what I was about to create, but then it kind of organically grew from there.
That's awesome. And so walk me through kind of the first hurdle that you had in the agency. Because in the very beginning, I always treat it as kind of the fun stage, right? When the client asks you and they're like, send me an invoice so I can pay you. And then you get a couple other ones and you're like, man, this is fun. Like, I'm making money. But then what was the first challenge you guys had?
At some level of scale, probably around maybe 8 or 10 people, we really operationally, we were not set up for any kind of real growth beyond that. And that was the first challenge, was to get the systems and the structure in place where we could scale up much larger than a small team. That was probably 3 or 4 years in.
So tell me more about that, of like, how did you know you were at that point? Because there's a lot of people listening or maybe there's 2 people listening, where they're at that point. They have 8 or 9 people. They don't realize where they're at. That's kind of what I went through a lot of times, is like, I would hit a challenge. I wouldn't realize where I was at, but I would hear other people having that challenge. But if I realized I was there, then I was like, oh, I can do that.
I think there was a realization where you have to move from managing people to managing systems. And when you feel like this is getting harder and harder because I'm managing people, and these people don't often know what to do, they don't have any systems to fall back on or processes to follow, then that's kind of the light bulb moment. And I did realize that we needed to really implement SOPs. We need to clearly define our services, decide what we offer and what we don't offer, so that we can figure out what we're really good at, document all that stuff. And then all the other, even non-service delivery aspects of the business, operational aspects, like how do we recruit and onboard people, and financial and accounting type of operations. So there's that realization where if I always need to tell someone what to do and they don't have anything else to fall back on, then I'm managing the people, but I'm not managing the process and the systems.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about when you hit this and you're like, my gosh, and I think the telltale sign is when everyone's coming to you for everything, right? They're like, oh, I'm done. What's next? And you're like, what do you mean what's next? And then you have to look at yourself going, oh, I didn't give them the direction of where we're actually going. So the boat's going this way. So steer this way when the boat changes course. So what was the first thing that you did? Like, there's so many people that think about SOPs, especially as visionaries. I don't know if you're a visionary or you're more of an operator. It sounds like a visionary, but I get overwhelmed of going, oh my God, I got to create all these stupid processes. And how did you get through it?
I am a visionary, and I had to hire the operator, and he was already someone who was in the agency for a while. He had a natural inclination, very, very process driven guy. And I really handed it to him, and I said, Eddie, we're really at the stage where we need to document everything that goes on, every process, onboarding a client, servicing them across every service, offboarding, same thing with people, recruiting, onboarding, the whole employee journey, and offboarding as well. And we turned to ClickUp, actually, and I have to say that we're huge fans of ClickUp now, because we had this pretty fragmented tech stack. But now ClickUp, in addition to it being really an ERP where all of our systems are and documented SOPs, but also our CRM is there, our applicant tracking system is in there, and we're using time tracking in there. So it was a combination of finding the right person who had the inclination and the drive to do it, and a really robust, flexible platform like ClickUp that enabled him to build it out pretty quickly. So we did that in a matter of a few months, I would say. And that really changed everything, because then people had so much more security in knowing people that before didn't know where to turn to, and a lot of things would then escalate and bubble up to me inevitably. I noticed that stopped, and then people got their answers from the documentation that was there in ClickUp. And it was a beautiful thing.
What was the next big hurdle that you guys went through? Now that, you have 10 people, you have SOPs, people have some sets of direction. What was that next hurdle that you guys hit?
I would say we're kind of in it right now, and this is more of an external challenge. But because we are primarily focused on SaaS businesses, that was red hot during COVID. Now, not so much anymore. I think the broader economy has put a lot of pressure on tons of companies, but SaaS companies in particular are seeing their valuations are coming down, their marketing budgets are getting cut. And this year in particular, which is the first full post-COVID year, it's a different environment, and we're seeing a slowdown. And I've talked to other agencies, and I believe that we're not the only ones. I think it's a tougher environment. And then right now we're really trying to double down on marketing of our brand, and also lead generation marketing and performance marketing to get us out of this hole.
Yeah. I always tell agencies, and really any business, you can't always rely on what got you there. Like for so long, when we started the first agency in 99, and we would just say, hey, we can do a website for you. It was easy getting business, because there was not many people doing websites. And then as that started progressing and more people got websites, then we couldn't just rely on going through the phone book, because now everyone had websites. We couldn't be like, hey, this new internet thing? Like, I literally remember doing this. Be like, would you like a website where people can go and find out more information? Then you don't have to pay all this money to the white or yellow pages or whatever they were called. And then, but it changed, and you have to kind of adapt. And for the past, I would probably say 7 years, almost every business was going up. And now it's kind of, it dwindled off for a little bit. Now I see it going back up again. But the ones where it's starting to go back up again are the ones that are thinking like you, of going, how can I market? How can I do things a little bit different? I also think agencies need to think about, how can we use AI? The biggest advantage that AI has, and this is why agencies get paid the big bucks, And the one that can solve the biggest challenge the quickest gets paid and they win. So if you can use tools in order to get there, you're going to get that so much more. So let's talk about marketing for you guys. How are you guys doing marketing different now in order to start generating more leads for you?
Well, for one thing, we've really formalized a whole growth team. So we moved a couple of the star performers in our agency into growth-related roles. So we moved one person in as a marketing director. She was one of the top account managers. And then another top account manager and strategist moved into a sales role. And then we brought a third more junior marketing person in. And I consider myself part of that team too. So we now have a marketing and growth team of 4 people out of 35 or so, which I think is pretty large actually.
Just for your agency, right? Like your agency is the only client for them. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. So 2 full-time marketers and a full-time salesperson in addition to myself. For most of this whole journey, it's been only me doing marketing and sales, really. And I realized I've got to dedicate agency resources to this problem. And it worked out well too, because it helped me avoid having to downsize, because there was that, I was staring at it right in the face. I mean, do we downsize? The margins have been way too low for way too long. And I knew we needed to really solve this marketing and sales problem. It was not really a sales problem, but more marketing. So we took some of the top talent from the delivery team and moved it over. That was part of it. And then in terms of strategy, we've always thought about the 3 channels that I've heard you mention: inbound and outbound and partnerships. And I would also put referrals into that bucket. Inbound had always been something that we weren't doing well enough. And we launched a podcast for one.
There we go. Nice.
Yeah. So I love doing it. It's my favorite thing in any given week is to do these interviews. Podcasting has been beneficial for so many reasons. And I wouldn't even put building an audience in the top 5, because we haven't really built a huge audience. If we're lucky, we'll get between 50 to 100 downloads per episode, which still in the world of podcasts makes us a tiny, tiny podcast.
But everyone think about it. If you do an episode a week, that's kind of like you getting a small speaking engagement in an auditorium of your perfect prospect listening to you. Everyone comprehend that. Like, we're not going to create, like, I don't have the Joe Rogan audience. I don't have, right? Like, we're a little bit bigger than that, but like, I want everybody to just comprehend that. When I talk to my team and I'm like, all right, guys, we have over 40,000 listen to this each month per episode. That's a stadium, right? But that's taken me 9 years to get to. But I would still be fine with 50 to 100.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point, because it's really not about building a huge audience. It's building a relevant audience. But in addition to that, you can repurpose podcast content in so many ways. So that's fueling our social media channels, primarily LinkedIn right now. It's revitalized our website and our blog. It's helped us to create assets for salespeople. And so it has this spillover effect with the repurposed content. And the last thing is actually the clarity that it brings me in my thinking. Wow. I get new ideas that excite me through every single conversation that I have. And I wouldn't be getting those ideas if I wasn't talking to these people. I'd be still reading the blogs that I used to read, or I don't know what else. But that kind of the infusion of new ideas and the clarity of thought that podcasting brings me, I think it makes me a better leader for the agency.
Have you been inviting people that you want to work with on the podcast?
At times, yes. But for the most part, I'm really trying to go after people that I think the audience is going to really learn from, even if I know that I can't really win them as a client. So I'd say by now, I've done about 150 episodes.
Nice.
And I think probably we've gotten 3 or 4 of those people as clients over a couple of years. So in terms of statistics, no, not really. I'm really trying to get great conversations, and I do aim as high as possible. I mean, we've had the SVP of marketing from HubSpot, and we've had the COO of ClickUp on the show. And maybe if I'm lucky, I can get you on my show one day, Jason.
Of course, I'll come on.
And I definitely, we're aiming high in that respect, but I'm trying to really generate great conversations. And I don't think it's really even a good idea to try to set up podcast guests as sales prospects, because it's kind of disingenuous. And I do think they can sniff it out. And we always have a conversation a little bit before and a little bit after. And I'm sometimes tempted to say, hey, why don't you check us out? Or maybe, maybe we can have a follow-up private call about X, Y, Z. But 95% of the time I bite my tongue, because I just don't. If that person is ready, they'll come back to me based on the conversation we had. If they like the way I think, they'll naturally check me out, dig a little bit deeper, find the agency and say, yeah, I'd like to have another talk with Paris about maybe working together.
What I've found is you start with the initiative of it's all about the audience, whatever's the best with the audience. That's what I've always done and protected them from people, like episodes that weren't good. There's probably 20% of the shows we record that never see it, because I have my team go, is this valuable to the audience? So we start there. But what happens is when you reach out to, and I tell, like you were saying, it doesn't really matter on the people that listen in the very beginning, because there's not many people listening, right? Especially when the first year, you might have like 10 people listen to right? Because there's so many different podcasts. Like, for example, Seth Godin would never talk to me other than if I reached out and said, hey, I would love to interview you and help you promote your book on the podcast. And he was like, and literally specifically what he said, he goes, I'm really busy right now. Hit me up in 6 months. Put a little task in there, hit him up in 6 months, forward him the same email. I said, hey, Seth, you wanted me to reach out to you in 6 months to come up. He go, cool. Well, when do you want to do it? And he came on, gave me an hour of his time of me just picking his brain for the audience, but it was really truly for me, right? So you're gaining insights. The same thing happens when I'll reach out, like we'll make a list of 100 agencies that we know we love what they do. And we'll reach out. We want to know how they built. But what happens when we invite them on the podcast, they're going to check out the podcast. And they're like, oh, I like this. I like this style. And then they start building that relationship. And then when they come on, a lot of times when I hit the end record on the button, people are like, hey, you have an agency mastermind? Tell me more about it. Like, okay, well, it works this way and this way. But you have to kind of prompt them for it. But I see a lot of agencies crushing it on that strategy. So you just may want to look at fine-tuning it. And I know what you're saying, like you don't want it to be disingenuous, but if you have the whole mentality of like, how do I create the best content? And you have that first, the byproduct, if you do it the right way and add the little cues, like going, oh, my client was just like that, and we solved that problem, and this is how they did it. They're going to ask you more about it at the end. So don't miss out on that. I promise it's not going to come out disgenuine. Now, definitely different ways there's lots of people doing it the wrong way too. You've seen that, like the LinkedIn connections and that kind of stuff, like avoid that part.
Oh, yeah.
If you have the content first, audience first, you can't lose. And it seems like it's going really well for you.
Yeah. And the podcasting was the start of it. And one other thing to get back to the marketing question, turned on outbound marketing fairly recently at the beginning of this year. We had never really done that before, and it's working. And I'm surprised. We had tried it internally with previous teams, but I think we never did it in a serious way. At the beginning of this year, we decided, let's try to find a really qualified partner who can do this with us. And we actually found someone almost right next door to us here in Sofia, Bulgaria. And we can walk over to their office. They can come over here. And that's been great because that's created some pretty steady pipeline with pretty good leads. One thing I'll say about outbound, though, and a lot of agencies probably know this, is that those leads are not as ready to buy as inbound leads or referral. So those take longer. The sales cycle naturally takes longer. And you need to approach those conversations and discovery calls with a much more consultative approach, because they're not coming into the call saying, I have an SEO problem, or I really need somebody to audit my paid search. they're saying, well, you know what, you got my attention. I think we're pretty good, but I don't know what do you all have to say? And you have to really guide that conversation. You have to ask a lot of questions and get them talking. And it could take a long time before they even start to realize that they might not be doing something as well as they think. And so outbound is slower. You don't have the same close rate, but you do get volume typically. So that's the trade-off, I guess.
Well, it's about making them aware. It's kind of, like what everyone talks about, the kind of top and middle and the bottom of the funnel. The interesting thing, whenever anybody, joins the mastermind or buys a playbook or whatever it is, right? We always ask them two questions. We're like, what are you most excited about learning? And why did you invest? And for the past 8 years, we've been going through that data. And a majority of them are like, we've been listening to your podcast for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, right? So just because they're not raising their hand now, you're just building a huge moat. I just want everybody to know that, like, you're building this huge moat around you that your competition cannot get into. So think about all the so-called agency coaches or gurus out there now, right? It's just like, and I think we've created a lot of them. Like they have some success in the agency, and then they're like, oh, I could be an agency coach. I want that lifestyle. And they go do it. But then they only do it for like 6 months to a year, and then they shut it down because they weren't steady at all that stuff. They don't understand all the stuff that goes into it. And it's the same thing with all of your agency competitors. Think about how strong the brand of Gary Vaynerchuk is and all that business coming to VaynerMedia, of all the content that they put out. And he doesn't even do anything inside the business. He doesn't manage the clients, manage the people. Like, he's just the thought leader. He's the figurehead. He's the brand. And that's what I want for all of you, because that allows you to create this machine that's an asset rather than a burden. It creates predictability, it creates freedom, it creates wealth. But it all starts with doing content that helps, and then using that in order to kind of build the business over time and not rush into it. And I think you've seen that, in the past 14 years, it's just this steady growth. You'll have ups and down years. I tell people, I'm like, you'll have a growth year, you'll have a learning year, or an investment year.
That's a nice way to put it.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know how it is for those listening, but for us, COVID was a boom. Initially, it was like a falling off a cliff because everyone panicked and froze their marketing budgets. But then the acceleration to digital was so profound, and we had some boom years, and then this year has been a lot slower, really, the broader economy. And being in this for 14 years, I have seen ups and downs, and these cycles, you get better at recognizing them over time. And both that the good times won't last forever, and you also know that the harder times aren't going to last forever, and you get better at digging yourself out of those holes. And that's kind of where we are now. I think we're at least 2 or 3 cycles in from seeing big growth years, and then now a slowdown. We had a lot of growth during the 2012 to 2014 period, when Google was cracking down on black hat SEO with these updates that are infamous, Panda and Penguin. And we were always doing white hat SEO, but then the world really rushed into white hat SEO and content marketing, and we were ready to get that business. But then I knew, there's going to be 1,000 agencies that are going to pop up overnight that are going to be doing the same thing, and we have to still, we can't be satisfied. This is not going to last forever.
Well, I look at it as, how do I get the attention of my perfect audience? How do I separate myself from everyone else? Because there's so many Me Too agencies out there that look the same. I've hired so many agencies for this business, and you would think like I would be really good at picking, and I would, like, a lot of them that I've hired has actually not done a very good job. I'm like, I feel like I'm teaching you, right? Because they do a really good job at sales or marketing themselves, but they don't have a process. So why I'm telling all of you this is, how can you separate yourself on your process? How do you come up with a methodology or a process that you can walk someone like me through, that I'm like, hey, you definitely get it? Or how do you create something kind of that makes your agency so sticky where they don't want to leave? Because it's not all about just getting clients, it's about keeping them and growing those accounts. When we have our clarity calls with agencies and figuring out, what do you need to do and in order to, get to that next level, a lot of times you're not growing accounts. Like, you're bringing in accounts for a couple of months and then you're losing them, and you're constantly doing that versus having that compounding each and every time and creating that reliable, predictable revenue where it's always there. Mm-hmm. And then you get to a point where now your business is sellable. Now it is like, we can chat about buying your agency, or maybe even stepping down from the agency, having someone else take that over while you just collect a check and do whatever you want. So
both are pretty attractive. Yeah. But you nailed it. The client retention and client churn rate is a major factor. And if you're losing one for every one that you win, then you're just treading water, really, and certainly not growing. And then it becomes so frustrating that you're putting all that effort into sales. And instead of celebrating those wins, you're saying, oh, thank God we got that client, because now we can replace the one that we lost last month. And now we're still netting, just breaking even. And that's not a good mindset to be in as an agency owner.
It's not. And if any of you guys are listening to that right now and you're going through that, like every client you bring on, you lose one, think about, all right, get out of the reaction mode and go, what can we do different? Both on the delivery side and also the marketing side. So if you can bring on 2 clients and you lose one, that's better. Or if you can bring on 1 client and you keep, you only lose a half a client, right?
Yeah.
Or and then that other half of the client that you can grow to double. So now, right, like you start seeing real growth. So I just want you guys to think about those 2 things. So if you're going through, like, I always loved when Tony Robbins would say, hey, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're giving too much priority to too many things, you need to make a list. So this is the indicator. If you feel like you're just treading water, do one of those 2 things. Pick one. I don't care which one it is. Mm-hmm. And then once you solve one, go on to the next. Now, if you can get both of them, then you're like, you're seeing, huge growth. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So thank you for sharing that. This has all been amazing. What's the agency website we can go and everyone check you out?
The agency is called Hop Online, and it's hop.online.
Cool. And then tell them in under 20 seconds, tell them you created a tool that could help agencies out. So tell them, what's the website address for them to go check that out?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We also have created a solution for agencies. It's called PLTV, which stands for Predictive Lifetime Value. And that website is pltv.ai. So anybody listening that wants to do more with your client's first-party data as you prepare for the end of third-party cookies coming next year, have a look at that. We can do some pretty cool data science stuff with first-party data, and looking to partner with agencies on that.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, everyone go check out those resources. Thanks so much, Paris, for coming on the show and really just having this dialogue. And thanks for listening over the past couple of years. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it out with some more agencies out there so we can help and reach more of them so they feel that they belong to a community. So make sure you share out and go to swenkit.com, and that will log you onto YouTube, because, hey, we have a YouTube channel over here. We put this on YouTube. It's not just on audio podcasts. You can look at our, my annoying face and all my guests' beautiful faces. So go there now. And until next time, have a swank day.